agree to be recorded thing, or it'll be like, okay, boop, it's recording. We're good. All right. So welcome, Kaitlin. Thank you so much for doing this with us and everything. And for some background for you all, if you remember, Kaitlin wrote the children's book. My favorite flavor is Papa is my favorite flavor. And so that's what we all checked out on Friday. And so there will be YouTube links to that when I upload this video and everything. But Kaitlin and I both are Bobcats from Ohio University. And so we both were reporters and kind of worked for the same newsroom like some of our past speakers. But I think, Kaitlin, the first thing I just kind of wanted to ask you to get started is just like, well, first of all, how are you doing? And what is going on in Kaitlin's life currently right now in this moment?
Right. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Good morning. So nice for Connor to ask me to do this. Yeah, so I'm doing well. I mean, the world is crazy, but I'm healthy and safe, and everyone in my family's healthy and safe. So doing pretty good, given the times. But yeah, so after I graduated from OU, actually I was working at WOUB in Athens right after graduation as a MMJ for about 4 or 5 months. And then my fiance and I moved to Maryland for his job. And I was an editor for a newspaper outside of Baltimore. And so it was a very huge change of scene going from Athens, Ohio, which is very rural, and covering that news scene to going to a very urban area. And, just the population density of the East Coast and everything else was just so different. And it was great. And then, yeah, my husband, his job took us back to the Mid-Ohio Valley. So now we're living in Marietta, which is 40 minutes south of Athens. Not sure how far that is away from Cincinnati. It's just pretty much the opposite quadrant of the state. And so, yeah, I am literally, after I am done with you guys, I'm interviewing for a job. And yesterday I got a freelance writing contract with a magazine here in town, which is for any writers or people in media, freelancing is a great way to go, just to get some extra cash and to honestly just be paid to do your hobby. And yeah, and I'm just really enjoying going to different shops in town and talking to the different owners about selling my book. That's the very first thing I did when I moved to Maryland too, is I just literally walked into stores with my book in hand and asked to see the manager, the owner, talked with them about my book. So yeah, my book is selling in, of course, stores in Athens, but also in stores throughout Maryland as well. And now here in Marietta. So yeah, it's kind of nice to just have that kind of that thing to have with you wherever you go in life, to be hey, okay, well, I have no actual stable job right now, but what I can do with my time is just market my book, and it's fun. And again, you kind of get paid to do your hobby on the side. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on right now. I'm in my house right now in Marietta, and the snow is coming down. I don't know if you guys got snow this morning too in Cincinnati. But yeah, that's I guess a very debriefed version of what's going on in Kaitlin's world.
Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, we do have a whole bunch of snow outside right now. So it would be a snow day if we weren't virtual, but now we can do e-learning. So that's probably not going to happen a whole lot, as much. But congratulations on the move back to Marietta. Congratulations on the marriage, everything. That's incredible. And so, yeah, and just you and the job, 3 huge things that you just shared in that short bit. So thank you so much for sharing all that. You got a couple of good lucks in the chat. And
yeah, thank you.
Right, my student Kenyon said, dang, we're her warm-ups. We're getting you hyped up for the interview. After
yeah.
But I think I'm going to steal it away for one last question, and then I'll give it over to my students. And so I think just the big, broad, open-ended question of just why children's books? What led you to write the Pawpaw book in the first place? And so if you want to give us that kind of timeline, I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah. So as a person, we went to school, took the journalism track at Scripps. And you kind of have to pick like your niche a little bit, like your specialization. And oddly enough, my specialization was environmental studies, which is another one of like my passions. I love writing and doing stories, anything to do with like, environmental discoveries and challenges and stuff like that. But I'm also very interested in education, specifically early childhood education. And I think a lot of that comes from my mom being a teacher, and her just kind of like, I don't know, I went to school at elementary school, the same school that my mom taught at. So I kind of got the behind the scenes look at what a teacher does and what the job scope really looks like when it comes to education. And I always just like loved being around kids. Like even when I was in like middle school and high school, I would do like camps and stuff, like be a camp counselor. And I just loved like the energy that children would bring, because they're just, I don't know, you could have a really bad day, but they could just do something really goofy or say something genuinely so nice. And it's just great. It just, they can really, I don't know, brighten your day. And I wanted it, so I was going through college. I think this was the summer of our sophomore year. Or no, Connor, you're a year below me, I think. College is weird though with years. But it was the summer of my sophomore year, and I was at home in Canton, Ohio, where I am originally from. And I was bored. I was doing like a weird summer job unrelated to journalism. And I was like, you know what? I need to do something creative with my time this summer. So I just started calling stores in Athens, local bookstores, asking if they have any suggestions when it comes to finding a publisher. I didn't really know too much about like, how does one find a publisher and what does a publisher do? And like, do I need to like, I really knew nothing about it. So I called a Little Professor bookstore in Athens, which is like a local little bookshop. And the owner there gave me the contact information for Monday Creek Publishing, which is basically one woman, and her name is Gina McKnight. And she runs her little business out of her literal horse barn in Nelsonville, I want to say, Ohio. And so I talked with her over the phone, and she was like, sounds great. Send me your script, basically, like send me the storyline. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I better like write the story, because it was all just going kind of fast. But yeah, so I kind of had the idea that I wanted to be about pawpaws, because I love like anything to do with like food too, and local food. And when I went to the Pawpaw Festival in Athens, Ohio, my freshman year at OU, I was just blown away that this whole huge festival for 3 days was all about pawpaws, a fruit that I've never heard of ever. And that, at the Pawpaw Festival, they're putting pawpaws in everything. Pawpaw, literally any kind of food you could imagine, they were putting pawpaws in. And so it was just, well, this is very fun. And pawpaws grow in Ohio, and they're like one of the only native fruits actually that grow in the United States. And so I just got really interested in it. And so I kind of was like, well, if I want to try to write a book, a children's book, I'll combine my interests. So food, children, Athens, like I love Athens, anything to do really with Southeast Ohio. I just really can't come to love the culture and the history here. So yeah, and I just sat down and wrote the book, and pawpaw is my favorite flavor. The title kind of like came to me because I know as little kids and even as adults, we're kind of reluctant to try new things. And so I guess my mission in the book is to not only teach kids and just regular human beings about pawpaws, and about their own state of Ohio that they live in, but also that like you should try new things, because like you might be pleasantly surprised. And so yeah, I found my illustrator just by contacting a bunch of people. I was just researching like artists in the Southeast Ohio area. I found Laura at Hawking College, and she was really excited to do the work because she is a little kid herself. And I kind of gave her artistic freedom to really do whatever she wanted. I kind of gave her like a breakdown of what each page would be like. But Yeah. Yeah. I kind of honestly forget the original question, but that's my like tangent for right now.
No, that was perfect. That was exactly what I was kind of hoping for. Where just catching us up with why you chose to write about, Papa specifically, and just covering, yeah, like that. Because I mean, even for me, and we all took a lot away from it, and we're all, I mean, what, 23 and high schoolers, and we were like, yeah, like no one, like we learned something new, and so like that being a big goal of yours to just talk about a food that even some adults haven't tried and should try was
Right.
really cool too, and. Hey, I want to make Pawpaw ice cream now because you included the recipe, and I appreciated that so much.
It's very easy. And if you don't have pawpaws, you can really use whatever. Mangoes would work, bananas, but it's very easy. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. So you remember we all watched the Pawpaw's my favorite flavor on Friday. So what questions do you guys have? I'm giving it to you all.
Okay. Would you recommend the author lifestyle to anyone else? I would recommend it to, so this is a media class, correct? Or what is the title of this?
This is a media arts writing class. So basically like anything about writing.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I recommend it. I recommend it to, I think, people with the kind of minds like you all. Because I mean, you have like that drive. You have to have that drive to like not only pursue like your passions and like to really just express your artistic abilities. But you have to like come to the terms that like it's not gonna make you a ton of money. Like you could potentially, I'm not going to say you're not, but right off the bat, it's not going to be instant. It's not going to be as easy as like saying getting a a regular 9 to 5 job. So I mean, I think it's fun. The best part about being an author, in my opinion, is when I get to read my book to people, to kids. I've gone back to my alma mater up in Canton and read my book to classrooms, to libraries, like settings, selling my book at different like, First Friday events in back in Maryland and stuff like that. That is very fun. Just like, sharing my book and some of my knowledge with just random people and getting to know a bunch of people. That is very fun. And if you're a kind of like an extroverted person, I highly recommend like, this kind of lifestyle because you really have to put yourself out there and not be really too afraid of what people think about it, I have dyslexia and like grammar and spelling is like a huge issue for me still. And even my like full-time job back in Maryland was an editor for a paper. And so everybody needs their own editor. You just can't be afraid of like, I guess, making mistakes, and just really kind of putting yourself out there. But yeah, it does come with some challenges, but everything does. And here's another question. Do you also, how do I see the, I keep on getting questions pop up and then they kind of disappear, like in the little text box. Let me see.
I got you, Kaitlin. Yeah, they have there's a little chat tab on the side for all.
There we go.
That tabbies was, do you have any other people in your life that have written books or have the desire to? So people you're close with or people, that mentor you or any of that.
I mean, my mom got her dissertation, so she wrote her dissertation when she got her doctorate. But no, not that I can think of off the top of my head. It was just kind of something I wanted to do. I mean, I still want to pursue maybe more like when it comes to like an actual, full-time job, I definitely could see myself pursuing more like news and information, being like one of my interviews next week is for a producer job at a local TV station in Parkersburg. So I can see myself doing that. My interview when I'm done with you guys is for like more of like a communications position for a nonprofit. So I have some family members who kind of have gone that route when it comes, to their professional life. but no other authors in the family besides my mom getting her dissertation. And then another question is, do you also write adult books? Do you want to write adult books? I don't write adult books, but I do write blogs. Like I have my own personal website, and it's really just kind of like my own personal therapist, honestly. Like, I started actually a marketing job when we first moved to Marietta. I started a marketing job. I went for 2 days. It was horrible, and I quit. And it was really hard because it was a nice paying job, and I already met everybody, and they kind of brought me on board with a little bit of training, and it was not for me. And it was really hard. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm sure other people are in the same boat as me or have been in the same position. I'm going to write about this experience and put it out there. And it's on my website. I don't know if I would ever write adult like books. I am not sure. I mean, never say never, because, life can just be surprising sometimes. But I do see myself writing another children's book. I would love the idea of writing about different places where I've been, because Papa's My Favorite Flavor takes place in Athens. It was before I graduated, I published the book, and it was kind of like my thank you to Athens. And I would love to write a book about where I lived in Maryland and talk about the history of the town that I lived in there. Write about a book about Canton, where I'm from. I live on my parents, I guess now, live on a small lake in Canton. And there's a lot of history behind that people may not know about. So writing a children's book about that is kind of like an idea that's running through my head. So, yeah.
I just wanted to say, yeah, I appreciate you typing out the blog post you made about the quitting your job after 2 days, because that was so, yeah, that's just, you probably, you're not alone in that one bit at all. There are people who probably gained the courage if they were in a place that they didn't want to be in, to be like, you know what? Wow, that's bold. I should think about that. And so, it is a big step of faith, but dang, yeah, it was just really cool to, I think, see that and to have you just share that so freely, because people need to hear that, I think, sometimes. So I appreciate that. We can, I might even share that in this class the next few days too.
Yeah, feel free. I mean, I don't know, just coming from our backgrounds of being news and information, every day at work, we were used at WOUB, and where I was in Maryland, literally every single day is kind of like an adventure. You're like, okay, especially this past summer with a ton of protests going on, and our local political scene in Maryland where I covered was just like So every day was like, okay, I'm going to this event now. I didn't know this was going to happen, but here we go. And you weren't in the office all day. Some of that was, sitting down, writing. You do have some of that time. But yeah, I started that job, and it was just like, here's your cubicle, here's your computer, this is where you sit until 5 p.m. And it was a great paying job because it was, news and information. Typically, you get paid a little bit more if you go in the communication side of things. But I didn't really care. I was like, oh, I can't do this. I would rather, get paid less and do something that I actually like doing. So yeah, feel free to share that. Okay.
Huge advice, everyone. Write that down. Sorry.
Yeah. Do you have a preferred writing style, or do you mimic others? I feel like for a lot of writers, we can't help but to sometimes mimic what we see and what we read. And that's not a bad thing. Honestly, reading is the best way to become a better writer, I think. My mom told me that so many times growing up, and now I can't believe that I'm reiterating what she said, because I would roll my eyes so many times. But it's true. I mean, the more you read, I think the better understanding of different types of writing styles there are, and then the better you can kind of create your own voice. When I was an editor back in Maryland, I would definitely have more of a lighter, more I would guess more personalized writing style, even when it came to news stories. And my coworker, another editor for a different paper that I worked very closely with, he had more of a sarcastic kind of edge to his voice, which was very funny, and a lot of people liked it. And it's sometimes I would kind of borrow some of his tactics and use them in mine. But the more you write and the more you read, the more you'll be able to create your own voice. I think when it comes to my freelance stuff, I definitely have more of like a playful, almost like an elementary age, like teacher approach to things. That's kind of going back on like my love for early childhood education. So I think if you can categorize that as a style, that would be my style. That's a very long answer to that. Sorry, but I want to quit my job too.
Yeah,
life is hard sometimes when it comes to jobs, but just know that sometimes you have to play the long game, and sometimes you just gotta quit. It depends on your situation. I don't want to give like specific advice to like everybody because everyone's in a different boat. But just know that you're in control of your situation, and get the skills that you need that you think you need in order to get what you need in life. Like right now I'm getting my real estate license because I feel like it's just a cool other skill set to have, just in case like anything else falls through. Just kind of don't be afraid to take risks, but also know that sometimes you do have to play the long game when it comes to certain things. All right. All forms of art are simply mimicry with a different coat of paint and flourishes. IDK, that's just my 15-year-old opinion. That is a very mature 15-year-old opinion. I love that. Love that. That's very good. Who said that? Kenyon. That was great.
And then there was above that. Thank you, Kenyon, for that wise there that you just shout out at us, Kyra, and then Miss Staley, who I think Rachel might have typed this. It was just they kind of go together. It's just what's the longest book or article you've written, and then for Rachel saying how many books. But I think you kind of answered that with the children's book. So
yeah, what was the longest article I wrote? Last November, I covered an event in Maryland, in Baltimore, and it was for a bunch of different kids, high school age kids and college kids, who created this humongous public forum event. It was all about them overcoming addiction in their lives and like living with family members who are addicts to any sorts of different substances. It was like a 3-hour event, and I literally just sat there and recorded the entire thing because I was like, oh my gosh, everything these kids are saying is so powerful and so important. So I just recorded the entire event and sat down at work, and I think I typed up pretty much everything almost to a T what these kids were saying, and I formulated it into an article and stuff. And I think that article took up I want to say half of the paper that week. It was very long. When it comes to if any of you go into the newspaper industry, articles are not measured in words; they're measured in inches. So when you're working with your printer or the people who actually assemble the paper, they'll tell you, hey, you have 15 inches left on this page. You have to fill it with something, and you kind of have. It took me a while to get used to understanding, okay, how many words is 15 inches? That's weird. But I think I want to say that story was 180 inches long, which is long. That was yeah, like I said, almost half the paper. I had a lot of help with editing with that. I had 2 or 3 different coworkers look that over for me because it was huge. Who are your favorite authors to read, if you have any? Oh my gosh, this is so hard. Well, when it comes to children's books, goodness, I loved the Judy B. Jones books growing up. I actually did speech and debate in high school, and I did humor, and I did a Judy B. Jones book one year. Gosh, there's just so many. I don't know. I'm a sucker for the classics, stuff like that. I've read all the Harry Potter books. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. J.K. Rowling is a great author. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't think I have a favorite. Just reading all kinds of books. Right now I've gotten into more nonfiction though, actually. Since I've left college and stuff, I've been trying to read more nonfiction because I no longer have classes to go to and learn from professors. So I kind of miss that. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything else about like the writing process or like the process of, like, I guess, becoming a writer, working with different stores, different like owners of stores, anything like that?
Yeah, you guys all had some really good ones that you had written down on Friday. So if you want to think back to all of that, I think maybe I had something, Phil, real quick. You did mention having dyslexia and everything, Kaitlin. So what this, the one thing that probably people would be like, why would you choose to pursue, writing and reading, something that would be, kind of just definitely a unique choice to do that, even having dyslexia. So like, what made you want to pursue that and kind of prove people wrong that you can totally write and read really well and produce children's books even despite having that?
Yeah. Well, I was born with this like condition called phenylketonuria, PKU for short. And long story short, it's like a metabolic disorder, but it's also comes with its own learning disorders. And dyslexia is kind of like one of those types of learning disorders that you can get. So I've like had it my entire life. Elementary school is pretty rough because that's when like you learn how to read and write and math, like basic math and stuff like that. And my mom was a teacher at the elementary school I went to, so she would like I would go through school and I would come home with homework and I would have like I would spend hours and hours on stuff because it just took me a long time to get through just like little things. Because I would reread a sentence over and over again and be like, okay, what the heck did I just read? And I think having my mom be like that constant like push of like, okay, like you got to do it. You have to get this done. We'll get through it. It's okay if you take a longer time. That's totally fine. And so I guess like constantly having my mom kind of help me and tutor me throughout elementary school, middle school, and even high school. And honestly, still today, I still sometimes send her things to look over. Has like taught me to like actually really cherish the ability to read and write. And I think just because of like really with anything in life, the more you do something, the easier it gets. I know that's very much a cliche, but it's true. And so I think like because my mom kind of made me read all the time, like especially during the summertime, which I hated then, I actually kind of learned to love to read. And I think once I learned to love to read, that's when I kind of became able to write easier and, develop my own voice after that. So yeah, it is kind of funny how sometimes like life works out that way. You kind of like hate one thing, but then it kind of actually becomes like a passion of yours if you learn to just kind of embrace it, so yeah. Yeah.
Well, appreciate you sharing all that too, Kaitlin. A whole lot. Yeah, that's big. I think I know you guys have some more good questions about the process and everything like that. Like, if any of you,
I can tell you when I first met with my publisher, she had to kind of explain the difference between wholesale and retail sale to me. So wholesale is the price that I sell my book to individual store owners. So my book is $17 wholesale. So I go to each store and tell them, hey, would you like to buy my book? And like many times people will tell me, no, thank you. And I'm like, okay, that's all right, bye. Like, here's a free bookmark. Like I have bookmarks that my publisher makes. And sometimes I'll just ask them like, hey, do you mind if I just like leave you these free bookmarks for people to pick up? And usually they'll be like, yeah, that's fine. But so that's another thing too, like rejection happens. It's part of like the writing process. Like just learn to just take it and move on. And don't be afraid to like reach out and talk to people. You will be surprised what kind of weird opportunities come when you literally just like walk into different stores and just talk to people. That's how I got my job in Maryland. Not by actually applying for the job, but by going into a store and talking to somebody about my book and then asking me where I'm from. And I'm like, oh, I'm from Ohio. I just moved. I'm looking for a job, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, hey, I know someone. And boom. And that's kind of how I got this freelance job here in Marietta. I talked to one of the store owners about my book. She said, hey, no, not right now. Honestly, with COVID, it's a little tricky for a lot of business owners to kind of say yes to everything right now, which is totally understandable. But she said that, my daughter is the editor of this magazine in town. She's always looking for freelance writers. So, you never know what will happen when you just they may tell you no, but another opportunity literally may come up. It's great. So anyways, yes, I sell my book wholesale to store owners, and they decide what price they want to sell it at, because they have to make a profit too. And then I kind of I agree to whatever contracts they have with their vendors. So one store will, split me 40-60. I keep 60% of the profit, they keep 40. Obviously I make the most money when I am a vendor at a downtown event or something, and I'm just selling my book, from me directly to the consumer, $17 like that. You know what I mean? I also sell online. I don't make a ton of books. I don't sell a ton of books online. If I really wanted to, I think I could probably increase that more if I made this my full-time venture, but it's more of a side gig for me. So yeah. Oh, here's one question. So you had to do your own sales. Yep, I am my own. My publisher kind of helps with marketing a little bit. She has her own social media pages, and she will reach out to local newspapers and stuff like that. If she knows that I will be, being a vendor or somebody or something at an event, but pretty much it's just me. And Monday Creek Publishing is a very small publishing agency. So if I worked with a large publishing house, I'd probably have my own agent or individual publisher who would help with that. But it's cool to do it yourself too.
And I think Kenyon did have a good question up here, was just what does, so when you do having dyslexia, especially, as a writer, and that's your main job, what does it visually or mentally kind of feel like? If you could describe that.
Yeah. Okay. So my form of dyslexia, I think that there's a lot of misconception when it comes to dyslexia with people who don't have it. They may think that people with dyslexia literally read certain things literally backwards. And that's not always the case. For me, it's certain words or letters that I will read and I will flip them. So if an S and a C are together, my brain will tell me the C is before the S. It's weird. 67, I read 76, 54, I read 45. It's just sometimes like that. But really, what it is sometimes things just come a little bit slower. Not that I can't comprehend it. It's just that I have to kind of reread or rework a sentence over and over again, which is not a bad thing, honestly, if you're a writer. You want to be careful about things. But I can remember when I was in elementary school and middle school, that dreaded game where we all had to get around in a circle and spell words out loud. I remember the word was the word aisle, and I had no idea that the word aisle started with an I. For some reason, my dyslexic brain thought that the word aisle started with S. And I literally to this day have to tell myself aisle does not start with S. No duh, right? When I say it out loud, it makes perfect sense. But I remember doing that spell out loud game, and I said S, and everyone in the class just kind of giggled and looked at me. I remember sweating bullets, oh my gosh, oh no, maybe I should just spit out random letters, because yeah, it's just your brain is just processes things a little bit differently. So yeah, and again, practice makes perfect. I wasn't always great at grammar, starting, sentences with certain prepositions or a certain way. It's just kind of those rules that I had to kind of break down and really understand. Oddly enough, foreign language comes very easily to me. I kind of joked with my French professor at OU and my French teacher back in high school that I was like, oh my gosh, like for some reason, all these grammar and spelling rules make more sense to me than English. So I don't know. It's just everyone's brain is a little bit different, you know?
I think we are getting close. Lissa had a good time, so maybe you can. I think you kind of already covered that a little bit. It was just, did you start reading or writing at a later age, as a child without dyslexia would? But then I think in addition to that, Kaitlin, just like right now, there are students that are like, man, I actually really want to write a children's book someday. Or I want to do that. Like, what tips would you give them in this moment to get started with that, to get the thought process flowing? So
Yeah.
what tips would you have for anyone interested in writing a children's book?
Yeah. So I would say like my first tip is to like really, what are you interested in? Because whatever you put out there for other people to consume, you want it to be authentic, because I think people can really tell when something isn't like authentic. So, you know, for me, it was, I just loved the idea of writing about a place that I love, which was Athens, writing about food and like local culture and sustainability, you know, stuff like that. That's what I'm interested in. So it came naturally for me to write like the plot line. It just kind of flowed because I already kind of had like those passions behind me. So kind of like write, I guess, just kind of mentally or physically write down what you're interested in. You know, it could be like health and fitness, or I don't know, the economy. I don't know. People just have like their different niche like writing areas to write about. And my second piece of advice is to not be afraid to just go out there and talk to people. Like I said, you just literally never will know what may happen. And so I literally just picked up the phone one day and called Little Professor Bookstore, and asked them, like, do you know of any local publishing agencies? Because chances are, you know, if you want to not self-publish, which you can totally self-publish, especially in today's world, you know, anyone can really put out anything nowadays. I just knew that I wanted it to actually be like a tangible hardcover book, and I didn't know how to do that myself. So that's why I decided to do a publishing agency. But like, think about all the different local bookstores in the Cincinnati area. You know, anybody in your like little circle that you think may have some advice. Just talk to people and see what they think. You may never know what they may tell you. And yeah, third piece of advice is marketing is a lifetime. I should say it isn't a lifetime job, but for me, it's kind of like a hobby. So once you do have that book, you know, you really gotta continue to put it out there, because you could have a book, but then, you know, you need to connect with the community that you live in order to like sell books and get people to like read your book. And stuff like that, and really find like your niche audience. So like for me, it's a children's book. So libraries are a great place for me to go to. I've read my book at the Athens Public Library, a couple libraries in Maryland. I connected with the local librarian here in Marietta just a couple weeks ago. So finding like your niche area of people. And a lot of times when I was the editor back in Maryland, I would get press releases from individuals who wrote their own book. And I think 1 or 2 times I actually agreed to interview that person and have a feature story on them because they were a local person in one of the towns I covered. So don't be afraid to like reach out to like, you know, different publications, like hyper local organizations that you think they may be able to interview you. Because that's another great way to, you know, publicize yourself, market yourself. So yeah. And Connor, I can give you like, you know, you have my email. If anyone has any other questions, they can email me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to put it up, and I always usually include the email too, because a lot of them will think of questions later on, things like that. So I think class is just now is wrapping up, so they're going off to their lunch. But thank you so much for this, Kaitlin. This was gold. Appreciate this more than you know. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit the end recording to officially end it, and then you can stick around for a sec. But those of you that are still here, go enjoy your lunch. please. Here, I'll stop
Bye,
recording.
everyone.
Stop recording.